Region 9. We are happy to be here today for the Region 9 Head Start Association first 1,000 days of early Head Start. And here today we have the regional office with support from some of our Region 9 grantees. And our session today is going to focus on creating meaningful connections with early Head Start families and children in a virtual world. And we're hoping that you'll learn a lot from our session today. We're very pleased to have our grantees with us to share their strategies. But first off today, I wanted to just share who our presenters are from the regional office. My name is Cynthia Yao. I'm the regional program manager for the Office of Head Start in Region 9, located in San Francisco. And with me today, we have Maureen Burns-Vermette. She's a supervisory program specialist also in the Region 9 office. And I'll let Maureen say hello.
Hi, everyone. We're really glad to be here today and to share out some best practices from grantees across our region.
And then also today we have folks from our regional TA network, and I'll let them introduce themselves to you.
Hi, Region 9 grantees. This is Noelle Granado, the Regional Teen TA Coordinator with STG and Region 9 Office of Head Start. I'm happy to be here.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Erica Marshall, the Early Childhood Manager, also with STG and Region 9 TNTA. Thank you for having me.
And then helping us in the background scene, we also have Jessica. Jessica, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. I am happy to be here and support this webinar, and I'm super excited to hear what our grantees have to share with us today.
And then most pleased to have today, we have grantees from the region. We have 4 grantees here from Maui Family Support Services, UCLA, Early Head Start, Urban Strategies, and Venice Family Clinic. And I'll start with MFSS, have them introduce themselves to you. Lorraine.
Good morning. My name is Lorraine Balag. I'm the director at Maui Family Support Services, Early Head Start, and it's located in the state of Hawaii on the island of Maui.
Hello, my name is Delia Vicente. I'm with the UCLA Early Head Start and happy to be here.
And from Urban Strategies.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carla Solano, and I am the Early Head Start Director for Urban Strategies in Phoenix, Arizona.
Thanks. And from Venice Family Clinic.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stacy Scarborough. I'm the Director of the Early Head Start program. Happy to be with you all.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And again, we're just really happy to be here. Early Head Start, we know it has great impacts on infants and toddlers and pregnant women, expectant families, and we are just really pleased to be here today. But to start off our session, before we start learning about our various grantee strategies, we wanted to share with you some information about an Early Head Start recent research brief. We got this through the Child Trends, and I'm actually going to ask this question to our Early Childhood Manager, Erica Marshall. What are some of the key important highlights of this study and about the impact to Early Head Start, if you could share with everybody, please?
Absolutely. So it was very exciting to have a new recent study. There's been a lot of studies over the years that have come out to say that Early Head Start has significant impact in regards to cognitive and linguistic development. But this 2018 research brief was published that it summarized findings from a longitudinal study, or so long-term benefits of Early Head Start. The study examined the program's impact on child maltreatment and on short-term child, parent, and family outcomes that were linked to those long-term outcomes. So in short, what was Head Start doing that made the impact that in turn decreased the likelihood of child maltreatment later in life? The study studied child welfare records for a period of 16 years, and it linked those records to comprehensive data that was collected on children approximately aged 1 all the way up to 5th grade. And it examined that impact that Early Head Start programs had in decreasing risk for child maltreatment. The research noted that families who participated in Early Head Start had better parenting family outcomes, greater parental emotional responsiveness, warmth, supportiveness, lower levels of parenting stress, less family conflict. Families who participated in Early Head Start had better parenting and child development outcomes, greater parent supportiveness, more supportive home environments, and improved cognitive development, engagement, and attention during play. It was these findings that led to the long-term reduction or decrease the risk of a child being involved in the child welfare system. In fact, it showed that there were 10 to 20% less likely to be involved in the child welfare system later in life. The study also examined additional outcomes, such as the reduction of the use of corporal punishment, improved family economic stability, and increased knowledge of infant development. The study noted that what made Early Head Start have this impact and compared to other early childhood programs was a two-generational approach. By supporting both parents' well-being and parenting skills along with child outcomes, we decrease the risk for later childhood maltreatment. These findings were super exciting, at least I'm excited by them. And as we move to this next slide, it can help guide our practices and our policies that we have in place. The research that I just spoke of tells us that we need to have policies and practices in place to support that two-generation approach. It is the two-generational approach that makes the difference. A two-generation early childhood education program has parent-focused policies that incorporate child outcomes, such as child care subsidies, food assistance, developmental stages, and child-focused policies that incorporate parent components, like parenting skills, family literacy, or financial literacy. This approach seeks positive outcomes for the entire family, whereas a traditional single generational program approach focuses on either the parent or the child. Early Head Start's two-generational approach plays an important role in preventing child maltreatment by improving parent well-being and parenting skills. It's this approach to improving health, well-being, and self-sufficiency of families that is gaining momentum because we're becoming more and more aware of the impact that it has. Early Head Start programs that successfully decrease conflict and stress in a child's early years, while at the same time supporting positive, emotionally responsive parenting and child cognitive development, were more likely to reduce the likelihood of abuse and neglect after the program ended. By providing resources, positive support, coping strategies, Early Head Start families are able to manage conflict and handle the stressors that come up in daily lives. And it is these findings that underscore the potential for programs serving infants and toddlers to improve critical long-term outcomes for children by connecting with and supporting parents and families. By having this family-focused policies and practices in place, we have a greater impact on the long-term outcomes of children and families that we serve in our program. And ultimately, that's why we're here.
Thank you, Erica. So one of the reasons why we decided to share this research brief with you is because it is an important fact to remember. I think the impact that you have in the work that you do for Early Head Start children and families. And it's really, interesting to see that, as a Head Start school readiness program, we've always focused on supporting families as well as children's well-being, but to see that the work that you do on a daily basis has additional impacts beyond what our original mission is for Head Start, to know that, the impact of the work you're doing, potentially prevents, future incidences of maltreatment and helps to strengthen both the family, parent and child relationships is, I think a really nice thing to remember as we go through our work on a day-to-day basis. It's been an interesting time, as we all know, being in this pandemic situation, and the region has really focused on trying to support all of you and in all the work you're doing in various topical areas. Today, however, we'd really like to bring us back to one of Head Start's foundational elements, which is family engagement. And so, today we'll be be hearing from our programs about just different areas that they've explored, from the infrastructure to some of the challenges they've experienced, as well as some of the innovative practices that they've been able to implement in not only their early Head Start programming virtually or in person, but also around the areas of best practice and support to staff around professional development. One of the priorities we've had in the region as well is to support staff wellness. And so we think it's especially important during this time that you also think about how we are supporting all of our staff. But again, today, one of the areas we do want to hope you leave with is a renewed focus or thought about how you are engaging families. We believe that family engagement right now is more important than ever. We understand that you all have implemented many different approaches and practices to try to reach out to families in this new virtual world. And we know that there are a lot of other things going on in our families' homes, in their situations, which may cause parental stress, whether that's, financial or, just, who will be with their child all day, or how to navigate through just the concerns that are going on throughout our society about, health education and health experiences. And unfortunately too, I know we all have some concerns about, potential sensitive topics such as domestic violence, child abuse and neglect. And so again, I think it's really important for us to think about new and different ways in this environment that we're able to reach out to families and try to support them in what their needs may be, so that we can have our children participating fully in our early Head Start program. And as you heard earlier in the research, just the impact on the overall effects of parental outcomes and prevention of child abuse and neglect. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Noelle Granado. She is our regional TA coordinator, and she's going to actually moderate the work that we are going to be sharing with you today from our grantees. And with that, what we're hoping as the outcomes for today is that you will hear different perspectives from our grantees about the challenges that they've experienced during this time, but also how they've been able to work through that and implement. And I would actually say with these programs that we have today, really, they have strengthened a lot of their infrastructure and support to engaging families, as well as hopefully you leave today with a better understanding of just the great impact that you have on the work that you do in early Head Start. And so we also have one of our grantees sharing how they celebrate family outcomes and what they've been able to see with their implementation of family engagement. So Noelle?
Thank you, Cynthia. I'm happy to be here to facilitate the sharing of the grantee's perspective on family engagement. I'm going to start with Carla. So if you go to the next slide on redesigning the infrastructure. Carla, can you please share with us what were the first steps you took to redesign your family engagement approach to virtual services?
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here today and share with you what we've done in our program. That has definitely taken some time and required a lot of flexibility. We first knew that we had to relook at our infrastructure. We asked ourselves what it is that we do have that would support remote services, and what is it that we didn't have, or maybe we did have but wouldn't work the way that we planned to for it to work. So we started by doing inventory of our technology tools and resources available for our staff. We surveyed our staff to understand their needs around technology and access to internet at home, as well as some training needs. This really helped us determine what we needed to equip our staff to and offer remote services. We took a different approach with families with so much uncertainty and constant changes in our communities. We wanted to be careful not to add stress to anyone. So we first had our family advocates contact families and conduct weekly check-ins with them before teachers contacted families. And during these check-ins, Our family advocates first established these weekly calls with them and completed family assessments. We wanted to make sure that we supported families with basic needs and that we had understanding of their current situations that maybe needed immediate attention. We also surveyed our families during that time to better understand what needs around technology they had, what resources they had and not have, and also what means of communication they preferred and worked better for them. This information helped us plan and develop processes with the intention to support family engagement. During the weekly check-ins with staff, we were able to identify families in need, and we developed a weekly rotating schedule for families to pick up care packages that contained diapers, water, baby wipes, infant formula. And during that time, as we conducted these weekly check-ins, we also realized the importance of maintaining communication between teachers and family advocates. Staffing meetings for us is a practice in our program that usually occurs like once a month. However, in these circumstances, we found that staff needed to meet more frequently, so we started scheduling them bi-weekly. And staff actually do it, they schedule these meetings as needed. They don't really wait until, the scheduled date at times. During these meetings, they have conversations between, teachers and family advocates and any other staff member. For example, if a situation that they're going to be discussing is relevant to a child's disability or maybe a child's health or educational needs, the education or health manager joins the staffing meeting. This is where staff come together and share any concerns or changes in the family that may affect their child's well-being. These concerns may have been observed during maybe a video conferencing, a FaceTime, or through a conversation via phone with the parent. Something they might have shared with them, it's important for the teacher to know. And during this time, they also share some successes and family achievements that we want to make sure that our staff are acknowledging families as well. The intention of these meetings is to maintain that communication between staff to better serve the families and children. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that there are examples of the questions that the staff ask during these staff meetings. And for example, we talk about, are there any changes in the child's behavior? Did the parent share something with the teacher that she's concerned about the child's behavior? Or, were there any health conditions that change, any hospitalizations? Maybe at the time before COVID happened, maybe the child was, being evaluated through the school district or, through, a program, and, maybe the referral is outstanding, or, they were evaluated and now they need, special services. So they discuss this important situation so we can better provide services to the family and make sure that we are working towards the next steps. So I believe that staffing meetings have been very helpful and are an important part of this process. We were very intentional in scheduling the family advocates check-in meetings on Mondays because we know that a lot happens on the weekend, and this helped us, get better information of the family. If anything happened drastically to the family on the weekend, and they were able to share with the teacher. So the other form that you see there on the slide, this is our recruitment tracking form. This is another way that another process that we implemented during the remote services. Our family advocates conduct community and networking meetings, and they track this information on this form. This has helped us track information and about changes in services in the community, so we can better serve our families to refer them to services that are relevant to their needs. And for example, if there's a family that needs like emergency childcare or food boxes, there's some agencies that are not operating. So we don't want to refer families to a place where they're not going to be served. So this has been very helpful because it's also helped our staff build better connections in the community with those agencies that they're continuing services during these closures. And they've been actually invited to attend more networking and community events virtually as well. So I really believe that our initial approach that focused on family and staff's immediate needs helped us plan and develop a more like systemic approach to these virtual services, and allowed staff to individualize the services for children. This really led, well, right now we have an average of 80 to 90% of families engaged in services from April to now, and we continue to work hard in structuring these services to increase our family engagement. So if you go to the next slide. Just to share, this is our wonderful staff. Without them, all of this wouldn't be possible. They do an outstanding job. They've put together a food drive, care packages drive, and then you'll see some pictures here of some of the kids doing virtual learning with their teachers, and some doing finger painting and painting, and so far it's been working well, but it's taken a lot of patience, a lot of flexibility, for sure.
Thank you, Carla. I want to just highlight something important that you said about the connection between family engagement staff and teachers, and communicating and talking about parents and their families' needs and services. I think that's very important in virtual world that we're in at this time. Always connecting both the education with the family engagement, and how can you better serve families. So thank you very much for that, Carla. I think we're going to keep you on and ask you the next question about what kind of challenges did you encounter in implementing this family engagement in the virtual platform, and what strategies did you implement to overcome the challenges that you faced?
I have to say that the biggest challenge was technology. When we were doing inventory, we had to reassign portable internet devices that we had. We had teachers that were using their hotspots in their cell phones and didn't have enough data to use their internet services. So we had to reassign portable devices. We had to clean up laptops because they were running slow, and we had to purchase additional laptops. And we continue to do that as we go. We're purchasing more of the technology resources that are needed. The other thing was staff and family schedules. We know that for a lot of our families and our staff, their routines have changed. It's taken a lot of flexibility with staff schedule. We wanted to make sure that staff understood that we knew that they might not be able to work from 8 to 5 or 8 to 4, whatever their hours were previous to this. So their supervisor held individual meetings with them and planned their hours that best worked for them. We understood that a lot of our staff had school-age children that they needed to attend to at the same time that they were trying to complete their work at home. So we knew that also having a consistent schedule and the times and the dates with the families, and at the same time accommodating the teachers would be best for both. So after staff planned their schedule with their supervisor, they compared it to what the family's availability was and worked around that to accommodate a consistent schedule throughout the week as best as we could. In early Head Start, it's a lot easier because the teacher-child ratio is lower than your typical Head Start preschool classroom. We were able to divide the teachers between both teacher teams 4-to-1, which was easier for them to plan their schedule. Another challenge that we identified was our curriculum materials and the tools that the teachers had. We really wanted to focus on quality lesson planning, but then we found that, you know, they were very well equipped in the classroom because they had everything they needed there in the classroom. We had our resources that were paper-based. So teachers, you know, have their resources and they share between each other. So we found that teachers needed to go back and forth to the classrooms, pick up and exchange resources, make copies, scan. And we did not want our staff to expose themselves like that or others, you know, so we wanted to make sure that, you know, even though they had to do that for a little bit, for some time, we wanted to make sure that they scheduled themselves apart, that things were being sanitized. So it was taking a lot of work and a lot of time. So we came to the conclusion that we needed to do something. So we purchased the digital created curriculum application, which all the resources that the teachers need to plan these individualized lessons for the families they are able to just send them through this application. All the forms that are used by staff and not just teachers, but like our family advocates were made electronic. And this really minimized the planning time and it eliminated a lot of the tracking and documentation steps that they needed to take, which was very time consuming. We knew that the activities that the teachers planned for the children and parents needed to not require a lot of time or materials. We wanted to make sure that the activities that the parents received, they could incorporate into their everyday life. So it is, I mean, it's understandable that these are stressful times for not only the parents, but for staff as well. You know, some have elementary school age children and, you know, they no longer have the option to send them to school. So we have been forced to find ways to care for our children at home, teach them and work at the same time. So we wanted to eliminate as much of that planning time as we could. So, you know, our goal was for teachers to provide those simple individualized activities that support children's learning in a simple way that can be beneficial to both. And that do not require families to go out of their way and purchase materials and toys. So the activities that they can do while engaging with other children is, that was our main goal, that we wanted parents to have that option. Another challenge was communication. How do we get families' interest? How do we gain their trust that we can make this work? It was so different for everyone. So we wanted to make sure that we focus first on their immediate needs before teachers implemented their virtual lessons, because we wanted to be as prepared, as much as we could. So we did not want to bombard families with multiple calls. We did not want to add more stress to the situation. So teachers started with sending videos of themselves singing or reading a book first, with the intention for the children and the families to have or feel some connection with their teacher while the family advocate was doing their weekly check-ins. So for us, quarantine felt longer because we were on spring break with all of this happened, so we never returned. So we wanted to make sure that the teachers had some kind of connection. So what they did was just send quick text saying hello, and that's how we started. So the meetings and lessons were very individualized for families. We wanted to make sure that they found that purposeful. So the first step we took was to train staff on the new individualized lesson plan. And we also had them analyze their child's assessment data. And by doing this, the teachers were able to individualize their lessons for children based on their assessment results and set goals with the family. And it was a lot of the things that they had already talked to the parent before we went on spring break. So this also gave the teachers a conversation starter. They expressed the importance of continuing services, even though we're doing it virtually, but we're still going to support your child's growth. So that's what we did with that. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see just an example of a plan that we developed together. This helped us really take action with what we wanted to do. we developed this plan, and in this plan we outlined, what are the tasks we needed to work on, roles, responsibilities with timelines that focused on meeting those immediate needs of staff and families. And this, of course, was a working document that, was changed a lot of times based on the state and local and national status. So that's something that we also did. We also wanted to make sure that we were prioritizing tasks, but at the same time, we wanted to see how much of the activities and tasks that we had planned in our program calendar we were able to accomplish by just modifying, implementation strategies. So we wanted to make sure that, teachers, knew, like, if we were having parent-teacher conferences coming up, okay, if we're able to do those, how do we do them virtually? So we found a lot of teachers asking those kinds of questions. They were asking, like, what are we going to do for pre-service, or what about the parent-teacher conferences? So we made sure that we followed our calendar as much as we could, to give them a sense of, okay, we know what's coming next. So we've been working with that. One example is our initial home visits happened last week for returning and new children, and they were conducted virtually with both teachers. And all we did is modify the packet that they did, and we made all those forms electronic, and we eliminated the ones that we really didn't need at the time. So we found that very helpful. The teachers found it very helpful. So those are the little things of how we've managed to find solutions to these challenges.
Thank you, Carla, for sharing your experiences and strategies you use to build the infrastructure to support family engagement in virtual services, and some of the challenges you had and implemented strategies to overcome those challenges. I'm going to continue with challenges and ask Stacy from Venice Family Clinics, what challenges did they encounter in implementing family engagement in a virtual setting, and what strategies they implement to overcome those challenges? Stacy?
Okay, thank you. For Venice Family Clinic, switching to a virtual world, we wanted to make sure that all of our data was kind of matching this change in time. And so you can see on the left-hand side, a Child Plus report. So we started working with Child Plus right away because we wanted to capture COVID-19 visits because they were a little bit different. And we wanted to make sure, like in our data world, that we could show what was COVID-19 and then what was, an in-person visit. So we started making changes in the database. All our home visits on lesson plans and then in the database are coded as COVID-19 home visit. And then we also have type. So we have a drop-down menu where you can choose if it's a Zoom call, if it's a FaceTime, a phone call, and we did put in person for when those types of visits happened. Because our goal is to do mainly Zoom visits. There might be some reasons for families that they aren't able to do that, but we feel that's a better interactive visit for the parent and the child and the staff members. So we've been working with Child Plus quite a bit to change our data reporting to show this different type of service that we're working on. And then at the right, for our center-based program, we are doing a mixed approach. We have children that come to the center every day, and then we have some of our families that are doing distance learning. So we are tracking attendance versus distance learning and in person, and this is for June. So you can see through each week how attendance is changing, and it's kind of a little bit, equalizing out. But we are doing a lot of mixed approach. We do have a lot of our services that are up and open, and then some of our services that are remote. And so we're just kind of studying what is the difference for attendance. So that is one of the challenges. We wanted to make sure that our data is really matching what our services are looking like right now and how we're working through that.
Thank you, Stacy. I think we're going to continue with you and go on to the next question and the next subject about adapting to support families in need. What new approaches have you undertaken to connect with the families in need and those special populations that you serve?
Okay. We learned the first week that we went to virtual services for home-based and center-based is that we received a large donation of diapers and wipes, and our staff was bringing them out to the families with social distancing. And I will never forget it. It was in March, and it was a Friday at 5 p.m., and one of my new staff called me and said that she had gone to the home and found a mom that was beat up. We called the police, and at that moment, I decided that every week we will be bringing supplies and materials to our families. Part of our work, of course, is, you know, we've always been relationship-based and been in person. And moving to a virtual world, there is a need with our vulnerable population that we serve that we do community wellness checks. So what we decided is that each week we would be doing the virtual home visit, and then each week we would be dropping off resources to the families that are in need. And so we started looking at our resources, and during the clinic, we have a food market twice a month where all the staff come together and put together food bags that we deliver each week. So every other Tuesday, we deliver food bags of fresh fruits and vegetables to our families. Our dietitian comes in and sees the food that we are receiving and puts together simple, cost-effective recipes for our families. And then our ERSI manager has done a fantastic job of going out to our community partners and asking for weekly donations. So we've been able to get books, paints and crayons. Two partners in Koreatown have made over 600 masks for children and parents, soap, shampoo, hand sanitizer, diapers, wipes. And then she's reached out to food markets where we've been able to get gift cards for families, and you can see a couple pictures of families shopping for the food and taking pictures so that they're able to do that. And then our mom that you see on the right-hand side with her Target cards, she actually lost her job during COVID and lost her childcare that she was involved with and became homeless. And not that Target cards are going to solve the homeless situation, but it does feel good to be cared for and that you can buy and purchase your own things. And so we've truly worked with the community to support the families each week and bring them items to their home. Of course, we do it socially distanced, but the parents have loved it. My staff have loved it. It's been a really big team effort. So they're receiving their virtual visit and they're receiving a delivery drop-off each week. In addition to that, we also went to a private funder to get speech therapy. Our school readiness results show that many of our kids have speech delays. And during this time, we've been able to provide, for those families, we have 56 families signed up for additional speech therapy. And so we have 3 bilingual speech therapists that are doing virtual visits in addition to our visit so that we can just continue to work on speech therapy during language and literacy school readiness during this time too. So this shows some pictures of some kids receiving all their different things. And then I think on the next slide, this shows some letters of families. All the families have been writing letters about their need and the materials that they've received. And so we give those to our community partners so that they can see the difference that they're making. And I chose these letters because they show kind of all the different items that they've been receiving. So we've been really appreciative of supporting the families this way.
Thank you, Stacy. I think you highlighted some very important aspects or ways grantees can connect with families. The community wellness check, I think, is important, not just virtual, but you guys actually go and drop off supplies. I think you said something very important that people want to feel cared for. And I think in these times of virtual working or losing their jobs, that feeling cared for is important to them, so they don't feel isolated while they're staying at home. So I think that is very great and important strategies you shared with us. So I think we're going to move on to the next strategies that is still with you to share, Stacy. Can you share any innovative practices you are implementing to connect and engage with families in the new virtual world?
Okay. An innovative practice that I would like to share is that our parent committee structure, they moved as fast as the education component to supporting families online. And so we started, as you can see, in March with our parent committees, and so with our community partners too. Many of our community partners were also not set up for Zoom or used to doing Zoom training. They were used to doing in-person training. So our parent team actually taught many of these community partners and practiced with them on their Zoom presentations for parents. So parent committees are popular with our families, and we wanted to make sure that we put that in place right away. So as you can see, each month we've had different community partners come on and do trainings with the families on a variety of topics. We ran a financial literacy series in June, and what we had shared with the families is that if you attended all 3 sessions, that you would receive $200 towards a career change, and that was also privately funded. We got a funder for that. So many of our families are in the restaurant service, and those jobs are really changing. So one family, we just paid for her books, $221 for her to go to start a different career path going out of the restaurant service. So we're really trying to also help families with looking at a different career focus and working with adult education in our community so that we set our families up for success in a new career. But this has been very successful. We're also doing open doors. We did it today in our Spanish class. We had 19 families, and that's a 10-week commitment. So this is working well in a virtual world for supporting families.
Thank you, Stacy. That's great that you're still connecting with community partners and then providing parent training for the parents who, through virtual platforms, who need it. So thank you very much. I think we're going to move on to Delia at UCLA. If she can share with us her innovative practices in implementing and connecting with families in a virtual world.
Hello, everyone. My name is Delia Vicente, and I'm with the UCLA Early Head Start program. We run a home-based program, and we have been implementing home visits since March. I think that I'm here today to share with you some of the parent engagement strategies that we have, excuse me, that we have done successfully to engage families. So the very first thing that we did when we moved in-person home visits to virtual home visits was to engage the family in a goal-oriented type of discussion. We wanted to make sure that we, as well as families, were on the same page in terms of the child's goal. And we communicated to families that children were not going to stop growing. They were going to continue to develop, and therefore we would not stop service. We would just do the service in a different way. And so once we engaged the families in this discussion, we all became engaged in the same goal, to prepare the child for school. So having set a common goal, we went ahead and provided one-on-one guidance on how to access the technology needed to be able to do telehome visits. So the home visitors guided the families on how to download Zoom, how to log in, and from there on a weekly basis, we use childplus.net texting to send each family their meeting ID and password. So this strategy really has helped us in engaging the families, and as Carla mentioned before, flexibility with parents and flexibility with staff is very important to be able to have success while providing virtual home visits. Many families as well as staff are going through the same situation, having other children at home, and we really want to meet them where they are and be flexible with that. Now, once we had families engaged in attending the visits, our next Our next step was how are we going to engage families in curriculum fidelity? And how are we going to ensure that we're still following our curriculum and that we're still making an impact in the child's development? So we use the Growing Great Kids for our home-based model. And Growing Great Kids has bound curriculum activities and bound manuals for the parents. So we, excuse me, we went ahead and purchased that and mailed them out to the families using UPS. So when the family has their telehome visit, they're able to then follow along with the home visitor. We also identified the types of materials that the families would need in order to implement the activities. Now, Growing Great Kids uses a lot of recyclable material, but there is still material that is needed to be able to do some of the activities, such as glue, paint, duct tape, and these materials would typically be given to the families during the home visit, and now we had a challenge since we did not have in-person home visits. So we put together a kit, a learning kit that would last the families an average of 3 months. So that way we didn't have to continue to mail out the activities. In our next slide, you're going to be able to see what other measures we took to engage families. So we're thinking about engaging families in education. We talked about already about engaging them in the home visit, having them attend, and then having curriculum fidelity. The next step would be, if we're going to prepare children for school, how are we going to know what skills they have, what skills are emerging, and what skills still need to develop? We really needed to figure out how we were going to do assessment. So for that, what we did was we created virtual trainings, and these were toy making trainings where families use materials that they had at home and the materials that we send them out to create toys. And these toys included things like maybe a puzzle, maybe lacing. They also included things like sorters and things like that, that we would then be able to use when we assess the child. We also assess the children's skill through observations from the telehome visit. And we asked the family to have focused observations on particular skills. And we asked them to take pictures and take video and share them with us. We invested in iPhones for the home visitors. We encrypted them, and we asked the families to share those videos and pictures of the children practicing the skills that we were assessing via text, email, or video. We also started father engagement. And with that, I'll talk a little bit later in more detail about this particular program, but the father parenting program began in Zoom, and we have about 20% of our enrolled families participating. We also engaged in social media campaigns to kind of keep the momentum going and having families engaged in the program and in sharing different learning activities that they were doing. So these are some examples of things that we did. And in our next slide, I will share with you what we found to be effective. So here you see examples of the materials that we sent out. You see yarn, paint. We picked 3 primary colors, and we had the family blend them in to make other colors. You see crayons that were donated by the crayon collection. You see construction paper. And there's an example of the manual that I talked about that we sent out to the families. In our next slide, you're going to see examples of the toys that were created in the parent training. So as you could see, the puzzle with the square, the circle, and the triangle, that's an assessment item. The lacing is an assessment item as well. The matching, you see a sorter in the back with that red box, and then it had lids that went along with it. So we asked the families to collect different lids that they had at home. We use egg cartons to do matching. And so all of these the family was doing as the trainer was training them. And you see a picture on your right-hand side where the trainer is showing, you could see her little picture right there with the Zoom. And that's how we conducted these trainings. If you go to the next slide, You're going to see examples of home visits in action. So here you have one of our home visitors, Norma, on the screen, and then the family who's doing the activity in their living room. And in the bottom, you see pictures of the children. The first one where a child is going to get the book ready to engage in a literacy activity. The second one where you see a child lacing with the pipe cleaner using one of the materials that we send them and Cheerios. And the third one, you see a child practicing pre-writing skills, drawing a circle. And the fourth one, you see a child gluing. So all of these are examples of how the children and the parents are engaged in the home visit. Some of the key strategies that, if we go to the next slide, some of the key strategies that really work for our agency were to take a system-wide approach. So if we go back to the management wheel and we take all of the different management systems that are in that, we really realized that all of them are relevant to family engagement. In terms of planning, we took a team approach and focused the entire team in being solution focused. We all acknowledge and realize the challenges that COVID-19 brought. And we all acknowledge that we prefer the old way in which we did service. But here we are, and we really needed to innovate. So our planning approach took the challenges that we projected, then we engaged the entire staff into solutions, and then we began to find those solutions. An example of that is when we looked at our enrollment and realized we were at the end of the year, and we're gonna have a lot of children transitioning out. How are we going to recruit? How are we going to get eligibility documents? And so our solution to that was to do virtual recruitment. We also changed the way that we accepted documents. We accepted documents via text, via email, via online application. And we also, for those families who could not access the technology, what we did is we mailed out applications for them to send back their documents. And so those were 4 ways in which the family could apply and receive our service. The other thing is that we really maintained communication with the entire team. 3 times a week, we met and discussed what was working, what was not working, and how were we gonna address what was not working, and how were we going to increase what was working. We also brought in parents and we asked families, what would be useful? What do you need from us? What do you like? What don't you like? I think overall, motivating the staff as well and thinking outside of the box and having staff wellness activities. We have a mental health support group for the staff. They meet every other week. And this is a space where the staff can really share their feelings about what is going on, can get some coping strategies, because we as a staff are also going through the same pandemic fears that the families are going. And so we need to be able to have supports as well. And this has worked well for us. The next thing from a systems perspective is really engaging in continuous growth and improvement, doing a trial and error. Okay, if this is working well, let's do more of that. If this is not working well, let's leave it alone. And being open to new ways of providing service. So if we can't be there in person, how else can we impact the family, and how else can we provide the service that we're funded to do, and that is so important, as the research told us at the beginning of the presentation. So these are just some ways that have worked for us. I'm sure a lot of you might already be doing them, but I hope that you find some of these strategies helpful and can tweak them to best fit the needs of your program.
Thank you, Delia. I think you touched upon something about system-wide approach to making changes and how that has helped you, your staff, and your families with staff wellness, parent training in the home, and continuous growth and improvement. So I thank you. We're going to move on to Lorraine at Maui Family Support. Lorraine, can you please share with us what you have implemented to connect and engage families in the virtual setting?
Good afternoon. I'm Lorraine from Maui Family Support Services. So just like my counterparts have shared, during this time, we've been closed from face-to-face services since March 17th. And it was kind of abrupt. But once we kind of all gathered our marbles, we surveyed our families to determine who had devices, who had phones, who had tablets, and who actually had internet connection at home. And so once we received that survey from our families, I worked with my finance department and was able to utilize a private funding source that originally would have been used for a project that we were going to have later this spring. But because services probably wouldn't resume, we asked that funder if we could allocate the $20,000 to our families to assist them with necessities so that we could keep in contact with them during this time. And so that was a go. And so we continue to assist families with internet and phone service as a way for our staff and the families to stay connected. Three of the probably popular platforms that we utilize is FaceTime, Messenger, and WhatsApp. And those are used for group and individual sessions. Our staff gathered materials from our classrooms and from our home visiting sector, and they prepared packets ahead of time so that when they had these sessions with families, they were able to have the same materials and refer the families back to those materials. May it be a book, may it be crayons, may it be a learning activity, anything that the staff was going to review with the families, they would have it at home with them. For a lot of our families, you know, internet capabilities or being on an app was a little bit of a challenge. 40% of our enrollment are English learning individuals. And so that was one of the challenges that we faced. So what we did was we took each app and we screenshot based upon the devices that we had. So rather it be an Android or an iPhone or an iPad, and we systematically put together a packet for them from how to download, how to link up, and how to call out on these different app sites, which we found was very, very helpful for the families. During the sessions as well, especially individual sessions, because there were some children that missed their teachers, and the feedback from family was, can't my teacher see me more than once a week? And so we had that dialogue with those teachers, and they were, you know, they were all for, and they were pretty excited that they would have this individual time with these children. And so for those individual sessions, it was really nice to see that they could actually set up a theme with activities only for that child, as opposed to doing their group, which could be a little bit more challenging, especially when, you know, families have their siblings home and they're chiming in like, hey teacher, hey auntie. So that became somewhat of a challenge. Some of our family engagement pieces that we had, a great sample is the delivery of parent bags. This has no data connected to it. It's all about the human spirit. Our family engagement specialist, you know, she was sitting down one day and she said, she was eating a cookie. And she said, you know, she said, I was thinking about our families and all the struggles that we're going through. And when I ate my cookie, she said, a smile came to my face and I felt good. And so she said it prompted her to come up with this idea that we're just gonna send out or deliver smile bags. And what it was a bag for every family in our program with cookies, chocolate chip cookies, 10 positive affirmations, flowers that we got donated, and just a nice warm hello from your family at Maui Family Support Services Early Head Start. And so she looked for volunteers, and of course the whole program, teachers, home visitors, and even the admin and leadership team, everybody wanted to participate. And so we split up our enrollment list, and everybody had about 10 to 15 deliveries to do. And they were safe deliveries. We followed our county policy, but it was such a warm feeling when we delivered these bags to our families. Some of them asked, what's this for? And so, you know, we shared with them, we're thinking of you, we love you, we'll see you soon. And so it was really, you know, I kind of get teary-eyed talking about it, but it was really a warm, comforting message to our families outside of all the assessments that we're trying to do with them during this time, all the structured activities. This was just something to share with them that we care, we're thinking about them, and we're here for them. And so right now our family engagement specialist is planning another one because the feedback was so positive. And so that was one of our highlights through this pandemic that we're still kind of chugging along in. That was one of the highlights of that. Another highlight is our caregiver Zoom session. And this is a Zoom session with caregivers. It's unstructured. It is partnered with 4 other agencies within our community. So myself and a county partner were the facilitators. And so basically, we just open up with, rather it be setting healthy boundaries, I may read them a children's book, and then I open up the floor for discussions. We have 6 caregivers right now. We meet weekly and we hold it for an hour. We're very mindful of the time. We usually schedule it at about 12 o'clock because we figure most children are napping. And so that program right there, or that partnership, has worked out really well. This week I'm doing healthy boundaries and using the Giving Tree, the storybook, The Giving Tree, as one of my resources with the caregivers. We've received a lot of positive feedback. Some moments, some caregivers share some deep thoughts that has kind of all of us moved during that session. And I think for those of us that work program side, it's good for us to take a break and really participate in a session like this. And so we're looking at probably kicking off another group. The max that we'll take per group is 10 caregivers, because once you go over 10, it kind of becomes a little bit too heavy to really monitor. The rules are we just have to be respectful to each other. We aren't here to correct anyone or to talk negative about anyone's thoughts or feelings. So it's just a safe place for caregivers, whether they be male, female, foster parents, grandparents, or even an auntie, anyone that is caring for children. And so that partnership has worked out really, really well for our program as well as for those caregivers. We've also done program-made booklets for children in a variety of targeted languages. This time has given us extra time for individuals that speak other languages other than English. I shared my home-based population, about 40% are from the Pacific Islands, which we have 4 different dialects. At this point, I'm fortunate I have 2 dialects that individuals can convert our English books to. And so that has really assisted us with that population and getting those books out to those families. Another exciting kind of engaging activity was our virtual walk. So what we did was we sent out a mass flyer to all of our families, whether it be through the phone or through text or through our YouTube channel. And they had a week to take a walk with their family. It could be around the neighborhood, it could be at the park, it could be at the beach, if during that time the beach is open. But all we needed was a picture of them and their family taking a healthy walk. And then they send it in to either their home visitor or their teacher. And then we build a collected slide. And it shows all of the participants in our program. It was really nice to see families together out enjoying the fresh air, because we did have some families at that time that weren't even leaving their homes. They were like staying indoors completely. Their babies weren't even out in the yard. And so that once we started hearing some of those from our families, we knew we kind of had to start to do something within the guidelines that are for our county. Another fun activity, and you'll see that picture on the next slide, but one of the other really fun activities was our virtual memes that we do with our families. And so basically we think of a theme. I think the first theme that we kicked off was, we are in this together, stay home, we will see you soon. And each staff member had either a hashtag or a letter or a word, and they could incorporate their own children into the picture. And so I collected all of the pictures, we put it together, And we posted it on our YouTube, on our social media account for our agency, as well as I printed it so that they could have it as a magnet for the refrigerator, which was really nice. Some of the feedback from some of our staff was they kind of got teary-eyed just looking at all of our staff, because at that point in time, we were on a strict stay-at-home order. So a lot of us had not even seen each other. We've only seen each other through Zoom or heard voices through phones. So that was a really engaging and exciting activity to send out to our families. And a lot of our families still have it up on their refrigerator, and they'll use it when they're doing their FaceTime or their Zoom sessions with their teachers and home visitors. The picture here is a dry run of puppets. And we were just making puppets out of things we had at home. And this was for the teachers for their first run in doing a classroom activity over Zoom.
All those innovative practices that you did do, I mean, from using financial services and your finance department to ensure parents are all connected some way with you and your staff, and then all the support you gave to the parents, the smile bags, and then the support for your staff. And I think we're going to move on into how you're supporting staff development related to family engagement. And I think you touched upon it a little bit, but please share with us some more on how you have in your program.
So for professional development and staff development, you know, when this pandemic first hit, my ultimate goal was to come out of it with a strong team. And so I really had to buckle into what practices am I going to assist my leadership team so that we can assist our direct staff, so that they can assist our families. And so that was a touch and go, and we tried some things, they didn't work, but some things that did work was really talking with each individual and determining their comfort level of using technology. I think my youngest direct service staff is 21, and my oldest is in her 60s. And so the levels of utilizing technology vary. And so it took us a lot of individual training to get them to utilize technology, or it's okay to touch the button, you're not going to delete the whole system, try it. And so that was some of the technology support that we had to assist our staff with. But moving on to social emotional support, that probably was our biggest, and it still is our biggest goal. We practice a lot of trauma-informed care practices here, a lot of mindfulness responses. And so it really is amazing to see my staff today, because now we are back, at least in the office, just not doing face-to-face quite yet. But it is interesting to see how much they've grown. We've worked on understanding our own triggers. And sometimes we do that in a small group setting, or sometimes we do that during our weekly supervision, which is a one-on-one reflective supervision that our agency naturally has. But knowing our own triggers and knowing that it is okay if you're working with a family and they express maybe an issue, a concern, or something that has happened, and that is your trigger, and you need to rely on your supervisor or the mental health consultant to assist that family, because that trigger is something that is too much for you. And so that piece of understanding that it is okay to reach out was a bit tricky for some staff, because they feel like they're failing their families. And so it took a lot of dialogue and a lot of sharing of research that it does not mean that you're failing your family. It means you're keeping your healthy boundaries to know that you need to stay healthy in order to continue to support them. And so that was one of probably our biggest learning curves. And that was just across the board with home visitors, admin staff, case managers. But now I think we're in a great place where we know we can rely on our team, and it's okay. It's okay to say, hey, Stacy, can you take this for me? And Stacy, you know, if it's something she's comfortable with, she will. We did a lot of physical professional development as far as keeping ourselves active. And that kind of ties into our mental stability. When it was okay and we were released from the stay-at-home order in small groups of 10, we did quarterly, or not quarterly, every other week field trips. So we went hiking along our beaches, and then we sat in a circle nicely, had our lunch, and talked about how we are feeling personally about where we are in life, and where we hope to be when we return to somewhat of a normal practice. And so those field trips seem to really re-inspire and re-infuse the fire within our staff. And they keep asking for more. So we're gonna continue it until, you know, practices change or time doesn't allow for that. And some of our other really engaging practices is our weekly center-based meetings. They meet twice a week, but for one meeting out of that week, it's rotated between the center-based staff, where they have to host it, and they also have to provide the game. So the last game was unscrambling children's books, the titles of children's books. And so that seemed to be a really engaging and exciting activity for the staff. Lots of humor, lots of laughter around that. But then some staff also learned new titles that they want to try for their families. Another good tip is when looking for professional development. You know, there are the webinars, there are the trainings that we expect or we want each staff to attend based upon their needs and strengths. But because the stay-at-home order has been for so long, it gets to a point where let's look at our staff's creativity. Let's look at their strengths. Can they take an online course in creative water painting? Yes, they can, because they can utilize that session in a parent training, or they can break it down a few levels and do it with their children during a Zoom session. And so we have to be really creative with the whole professional development, and really allowing our staff to select different webinars, different tutorials that they would like to participate in. And so that was kind of what we did for professional development. As far as our families, I know I have it listed for mental health screeners and consultations. We did have quite a bit of families in the beginning that were depressed because of the stay-at-home order. And so we trained our staff on caregiver safety. And so basically it's just a document that is very light, and it shares who can the family, you know, lean on, what are some emergency numbers, what's a friend that you can just call out of the blue and talk stories with. And then we also trained our staff on the PH9. And what that is, that's a caregiver screening tool that we utilize. And so we screen them, and based upon their score and the family's feedback, we then refer them to a mental health consultant. For some of our families, they were more comfortable if a program staff was with them, at least for the first meeting with the mental health consultant. So we figured it out where we could get all three, the mental health consultant, the program staff, and the family, on a Zoom session together. So at least the participant still feels like she has that program support with her, at least for that first initial meeting. And so we've seen a great increase in results. Our mental health consultant has been busy, but she said it's been good. She says she's had a lot of breakthrough with a lot of families. And she said she's hoping that the consultations will continue. So hoping that the families continue to want to meet with her. And those usually last from 6 months to a year. And the program pays for that. And I think that is it for mine.
Thank you, Lorraine. I think you touched upon very important stuff about keeping our staff engaged in professional development in these times. And you had some innovative ways on how you kept them engaged and supportive to the families. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next question with Delia. And Delia, what positive outcomes, data, or impacts have you found in strengthening your systems to support family engagement?
Thank you, Noelle. So family engagement, I want to start out by reviewing the family and engagement outcome framework in the next slide. What we see here and what a lot of my colleagues talked about was really, as I mentioned before, a systems approach. When we look at the family engagement outcome framework, we see that we really need to have program foundations in terms of leadership, professional development, continuous learning, and quality improvement, as Carla, Lorraine, and Stacy talked about. And then really looking at how are we going to create impact in the different areas so that we could then achieve family and child outcomes. So for us, one of the things that we focused on, or we focused on 4 outcomes. We really wanted to make sure that families continue to have positive parent-child interactions despite the challenges that COVID-19 might present. We wanted to increase our father engagement, and we wanted to focus on families as lifelong educators, as well as connecting our families to the community. So these were the 4 things that we focused on. And so in our next slide, you're going to see that one of the very first things that we wanted to do, as I mentioned before, was in order for us to achieve family and community engagement, first we needed to ensure that families were attending their telehome visits, that we had a way to provide service. So here you're able to see our telehome visit attendance. And with the strategies that I talked about earlier, we were able to achieve 100% of attendance in our telehome visits. You see that in March with the blue bar, we had 121. In April, we had 118%. In May, we had 102. And in June, we had 100%. So the families were really showing us through this data that they needed their home visitor more than ever, and they needed their support and to see them more frequently. So this graph shows you that we were successful in achieving the outcome of families as lifelong educators as measured by telehome visit attendance. Now that we had the families attend the home visits, we wanted to say, okay, well, we got the families to attend the visits, and they're, you know, we're being successful in that. But what about the quality? I mean, are these interactions meaningful, and are they of quality? So one thing that we did is we had the early childhood education manager observe the telehome visits and complete the home visitor observation rating scale, the HOVRS, which has a scale from 1 to 7, 7 being of most quality. So in this graph, you could see that parent engagement has a score of 6.8. Child engagement has a score of 6.6. And the parent engagement 6.8. So we see success in the family outcome of positive parent-child interactions as measured by the HOVRS with a score of 6.8 out of 7. But I think that the best evidence of both the outcomes of families as lifelong educators and positive child interactions can be seen through the pictures. Our home visitors have captured pictures of the telehome visits while they are happening. So as you can see in the first picture, you have a family engaged in a child development activity where you can see that both the father, the mother, and the child are enjoying their interaction. In the next picture, you see a child practicing some of their skills with the mother there. And you could really see through the other 2 pictures that the parents are really engaging in child development activities and that their interactions are positive. I have observed myself some of the home visits, and I've been very impressed by the home visitors. And I encourage all directors and management staff to do the same. I think you will be impressed with what is going on in your telehome visits. Next slide. So one of the things that COVID-19 threatens is family well-being in terms of health. Family well-being, as defined by the Office of Head Start, states that family well-being occurs when all family members are safe, healthy, and have chances for educational advancement and economic mobility. So when families face challenges that cause stress, and in this case, the pandemic, or poverty or loss of job, their health and wellness can be negatively impacted. I think that the most recent health data released by the CDC and many research studies have highlighted health inequity in families with low-income households. The families that we serve are being threatened by COVID-19. And the outcome of family well-being in terms of health is being threatened as well. So as an early Head Start agency, we knew that we needed to work on ensuring more than ever that children would stay healthy, that children had access to health care, that they had insurance, and that they were keeping their preventive healthcare appointments, including their immunizations. So some of the strategies that we used is we engage families in health discussions. So we asked our home visitors to explore the fears families had in terms of going to the doctor. We also asked home visitors to remind families that there were other diseases that children could be affected by and that were preventable. And so we did not push families to go to the doctor, but we did encourage families to check with their health care provider and ask if the type of service they were providing during the pandemic. What type of service were they providing during the pandemic? Did their provider have phone visits? Did their provider have telehealth, or were they closed? And if so, we provided referrals. So as you can see, family well-being as measured by preventive healthcare visits here, we see that there is, in March, 77% of the children kept their preventive healthcare appointments. In April, 76, we see a dip in May, and it's starting to go back in June. What we found with this particular outcome is that as a program, we also needed to change the way that we collect the data. The data that you see here has all been verified through medical records, as you know, we're all mandated to do. But that information was just not enough. We needed to track additional reasons why the children were not going to the doctor. Is it because the clinic is closed? Is it because the parents, you know, are not wanting to take the child to the doctor because, of course, if they go to a medical facility, they run the risk of being infected? Is it because there's other challenges that the family is facing? So when we started to expand our tracking codes, we learned that, in fact, yes, a lot of these reasons were correct, but we also learned that some of the parents were reporting that they were going to the doctor, but we as an organization didn't have the ability to request the records. Everyone was telecommuting, so we couldn't request the records, and if the records did come in, we didn't have a way to retrieve them because the staff was not on site. So we implemented something called RIXOHS, which allows medical offices to fax medical records as they typically would, except the fax goes directly to an email or a database where you're then able to retrieve it. The university has found the system to be HIPAA compliant, and therefore now we're able to retrieve these medical records. Another strategy that we use was that in the food distributions that we held, we gave out the forms for the families to be able to take them to their providers, and then they would take a picture of the form once it was filled out, and they would text it back to us. So in the next slide, I'm going to talk about families' connections to the community. So again, according to the Office of Head Start's definition of community engagement, this refers to mutually respectful, strength-based interactions of Head Start and early Head Start staff and families with community members and agencies at all levels. So, you know, we as early Head Start and Head Start staff must find resources and community partners that can then provide supports and resources to the families. And this is a particular challenge right now in the pandemic because they're scarce and there's a high demand. But staff actively seeked out these resources, and we have been able to identify a few resources. So as you can see here in the picture, as many of you have, one of the basic needs that families are in need of is diapers and wipes. So we went ahead and distribute that out. We also had a donation by the MacArthur Foundation where they donated toys. And then we had a donation by the Literacy Club who donated 3 books that were age appropriate to each child in the program. And of course, distributing fruits and vegetables. Walgreens also supported our program by providing several supplies. And our local council members, Nuri Martinez, also provided diapers and food for the children. So for the family engagement outcome of family connecting to the communities, we see that there are several resources here that were achieved, as I'm sure all of you are actively doing, because that is the Head Start spirit. So in our next slide, in terms of celebrating family outcomes, you're able to see our fatherhood involvement. This program was planned to be in person and begin in the summer. And we thought, should we still continue to do that or should we not? And we decided to move forward. And what you see here in the picture is the trainer providing the class. And you see a picture of the fathers who are engaged in the class. We did send out materials to the father. We're using the 24/7 Dad curriculum. We send out headphones for privacy, a pen, and a notebook for notes. For this particular class, we did develop an online survey, which is a pre-survey, and we will be able to have post data, but it's not available right now. However, even just having the class and the fathers attending is a real win towards father engagement. We all know how difficult father engagement can be, and we were wary about how this was going to work out in a virtual platform, but have been grateful that 24% of our fathers enrolled in the program are participating. So that, again, is another celebration for the parents. And the next, one of the last things I will talk about is our social media campaigns. So we ourselves don't have a social media account for various reasons, but that doesn't stop us, and we haven't let that be a barrier for us to engage in social media campaigns. One of the campaigns we're very proud of is our collaboration with the Crayon Collection, where we ask families to write messages for first responders. And so here you're seeing examples of the messages that the families wrote and then posted on their private social media accounts and then hashtagged the Crayon Collection. So this is a way to maintain engagement of the families and activities that you're setting up. But you know, don't be discouraged if you don't have a social media account. We don't either, but that doesn't mean that the families can participate in something like this or that your program can post something like this. I hope that some of these strategies and celebrations have either reinforced what you're doing already or has triggered some ideas on how you can use these ideas to then tweak them to fit your program. Thank you.
Thank you, Delia. I think you made an important point on using data to improve your system and services to serve families. I think we're moving on to the next steps, which I will share with you on what the region is undertaking to support grantees in building family engagement and virtual services. As you may know, that SCG was awarded the contract, the TNTA contract, and in this new award, all regions, including Region 9, will have a new family engagement specialist position. So we're currently hiring for that, and the family engagement specialist will work with all of our specialists as well as the regional office and the national centers on bringing resources to our grantees. We are continuing with new virtual webinars, ongoing work. Both the regional office as well as some of our TA network are working with region and state associations as well as state collaboration offices and other state entities. We're actually meeting with them monthly, the regional office as well as the state collaboration directors and myself are meeting with state departments monthly to get updates on COVID-19 and services to families in our communities that we serve. And we will continue to develop resources and that will send out to grantees on virtual services, improving virtual services, what you can do with families through virtual services, as well as updates on reopening So I think I will turn it over to Cynthia to say goodbye and thank you.
Thanks, Noelle. I'm actually going to invite all of our presenters to turn their videos back on, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a sec so you can see everybody. Well, I just really am so inspired and impressed by our panelists, as I always am with Region 9 and our grantees, and just all the wonderful practices and innovations. And I would say, you know, even with the toughest challenges that you face, we always seem to be able to find some different types of solutions and strategies to overcome them. So I'm hoping for all of you that listened in today that you took little tidbits here and there. I learned so much today from all four of you, so I just want to thank you all again so much. A few things I'd like you all to think about, and just some key things that stuck in my mind as we talked all the way from infrastructure to outcomes, right, is, you know, one of the things is, how are you working in your programs to strengthen the communication within your team on what is happening with children and families? I think that really helps to inform the work that we're doing and the next steps of things we need to undertake to improve and strengthen our family engagement. The other thing I left with was one of the things that Stacy talked about, which was the community wellness checks. So this is something that's been on my mind for a while, and it's been, how do we know what is happening in the homes? And so I thought that was a really great idea about thinking about different ways that you can connect with families and still meet some of the needs they have, but also thinking about how we can do wellness checks, right, for both our families and children. And I would even say with staff, right, because I think, you know, doing family engagement is hard work. And all of you who are out there doing this work, I know it gets really challenging, and, you know, it's hard to hear some of these stories that our families are enduring during this time. And so I think it's really important for us all as leadership and managers, supervisors, to think about ways that we can also do staff wellness checks. The other thing I really liked was, Lorraine talked about this, was about the human spirit. And so I really encourage you all to think about, you know, how are we promoting and encouraging, you know, inspiring and motivating on all levels within our program, you know, to validate and recognize, right, our human spirit, where we do the work of early Head Start because we believe in it, because we have a passion for it. And so, you know, just those affirmations and those recognitions, I think, are really important, not just, again, for staff, but for families and children. And so, you know, as we think about all of this, you know, I loved all the ideas about mental health support. One of the other areas we're going to start venturing into in the region that you'll hear more about, that I think every one of them shared a little bit of how they're doing this, is community partnership and engagement. You are not alone. We want you to think about ways that you can promote and encourage and collaborate with all the various partners and agencies within your community. We're going to start actually rolling out this idea of a collective impact model in the region. And it's really thinking about, how are you leveraging all of the community resources and funding? Like even Stacy talked about how she was able to pull various types of funding to supplement, you know, some of the different things they're doing in program. And you know, I know Delia also talked about, like, how do you, you know, engage with all your different partners? We also know there's a high demand for services, but we also know that everybody has kind of that area of expertise. So not to overwhelm everybody and each other, how are we pulling on those areas that we are an expert in, and those partner agencies are an expert in, and collectively helping to meet the needs of children and families? And then lastly, what I'll say is, I loved that we ended with outcomes, because I think it's always important to think about, how are we using our data? What data are we collecting, right? I think we collect a lot of data in early Head Start and Head Start, but what are those key important elements of data that will help inform us about how well we're doing, which strategies are working well? Which ones do we need to build upon? And what are some new areas maybe we need to venture into? And it helps us think about the effectiveness of our work. And again, I think this is more important than ever to think about, because I don't think any of us had any mechanisms in place of how we were evaluating virtual services, right? So it's really interesting to see how we have some of this data already at our fingertips, but it's just how you're manipulating it and thinking about it in a different way now to see if we're being effective in our service delivery. And, I really liked when Carla talked about, again, that communication. So I just want to continue to encourage you all to explore each and every different area that they shared today. And I want to say thank you to Carla. I'm looking at you all on my screen. Carla, Stacy, Lorraine, Delia, for sharing all of your wonderful stories and practices, and Noelle for moderating, and for the rest of the team in Region 9 for just being supportive of this process. And wish you all a really fantastic rest of your conference. And we'll be seeing and talking with you all again soon.